Welcome back, you lovely people, to Cowland on Cars, and you join me here in the filing room to talk about something very dear to all of us classic car owners' hearts, and that, of course, is road fund, VED, car tax. Because the 1st of April is looming, a lot of people have been asking me and DMing me, what does it mean for me? If I've got an older car, over 40 years old, if I've got a modern classic, or even a new car, how is it going to affect me? We've all seen the scary headlines, so here am I, hopefully, to put things on a more even keel and dispel all the myths. And the good news is, to cut a very long story short, it's going to be okay. So as I've said, April the 1st is just around the corner, and the government have updated the rates of VED, vehicle excise duty, pretty much everywhere. And in most cases, we're going to pay a tiny bit more, and in some cases it is a tiny bit more. 40-year-old classics, as we'll get to at the end, nothing's changed. So if you do have a car over 40 years old, you've got a car that's coming towards 40 years old, the good news is things are still very much on our side. Now, we've all seen the headlines, £6,000 car taxes coming, rates are going through the roof. That isn't necessarily true. Yes, on newer cars, we'll go into the detail in a minute, there are some big bills coming, but then again, if you can afford the kind of cars that the new tax bills affect, you've probably got enough money not to worry about it in the first year. But let's start with a bit of a history lesson. What is VED anyway? Well, VED is the annual fee that most UK drivers pay to the DVLA to keep their vehicle on public roads, whether it's driven there or just parked. And it goes way back. A vehicle tax actually started in Britain in 1888, but the modern motor vehicle version kicked in around 1920 with the road fund licence. Who remembers that? Back then, the money was ring-fenced, hypothecated, if you want to use the posh word, straight into a road fund for building and fixing roads. Can you imagine that? Thanks to David Lloyd George in 1909, people actually even got tax discs, and if you're old enough to remember those, fair play to you. But in 1937, the old road fund licence system was replaced by what we now call VED. The hypothecation ended. Winston Churchill famously raided the fund for other stuff, like wars and things like that. And then, of course, since then, because of that, now VED, road fund licence as it was, now vehicle excise duty, goes into all sorts of other stuff, and it covers general taxation. And I think it's fair to say from anyone that's been driving recently, it doesn't go into the roads, does it? If you look at the potholes, they're not spending it on the roads, that's very clear. They're obviously spending it on much more important things. Yes. The government tells us it's a general taxation now, and it's tied to encouraging lower emissions and penalising high polluters, and it's collected by the DVLA, based on your car's age, CO2, emissions, list price or engine size. And the rules are changing depending on when your car was first registered. So stick around, it's going to be a very simplistic version of this, but within reason I'm going to try and explain what each of the brackets of car age are changing to and what it means for you. So these are the main changes from the 1st of April 2026 for all new and nearly new cars. So the standard rate for any car registered after the 1st of April 2017, whether it's petrol, diesel, hybrid or EV after year one, jumps from £195 to £200 a year. If you've bought a new expensive car recently, you'll know there's a luxury add-on for cars over £40,000, and that rises from £425 to £440. So qualifying cars now pay up to £640 in total. The scary one, of course, is the first year showroom tax for brand new high-emission petrol and diesels. That skyrockets. So the top band, which is 255 grams per kilometre CO2, is now 5,690, up from 5,490. And about 59 models from Ford, BMW, Mercedes get hit very, very hard. Pre-2017 but post-2001 cars, the CO2 bands will creep up slightly. So band L, which is 226 to 255, is now 760. Band M over 255 is 790. So it's interesting to note that pre-2001 cars are still taxed by engine size. Anything over 1549cc is now £375, and it was 360. So it's a small inflation bump. Now, if you're shopping new or nearly new, it's going to hurt. There's no two ways to say this. First of all, the £200 flat rate kicks in straight away after the first year. The luxury threshold stays 40k for all petrol and diesel, but EVs get a break. 50k if you want a swanky EV. So some Teslas, some Polestars will dodge the £440 supplement. But the first year rates for thirsty new SUVs, performance cars, they're brutal. Thousands up front. Everybody's calling it a stealth tax on driving. Do you know what? I don't disagree with that. Now, this is the bit that really interests me, modern classics. You've seen the online rants, the clickbaity headlines, the stuff that I really like to buy, the relatively recent cars. how's it going to affect them? Because they are the cars that will still pay some road fund licence. We know there's other charges that affect modern cars, like ULEZ, things like that. How does the tax change affect them? Cars registered 2001 to 2017, those CO2 bans rise £10 to £30. So high performance modern classics like early AMGs, RS Audis, big V8 Jags in bands L and M are now £760 to £790 a year. Pre-2001, big cars are up £375. Now, it's not the end of the world, but if you're running just something that's a bit meaty and a bit lumpy that you have as your high days and holidays cars, it is going to cost a little bit more than it did last year, but hopefully not a deal breaker for you. But now the really good news, what we'll call proper classics, and that's no way being disingenuous to the younger cars, but we're talking about cars that have hit that 40-year threshold. So anything that's gone tax exempt, effectively historic class vehicle, these are exactly the same. Despite what all the headlines have told you, the government and FBHVC have confirmed no changes, no threats, and the rolling rules stay. So every April, another year's cars go tax-free. And from the 1st of April 26, any car built before January 1986 or first registered before the 8th of January 1986, if you don't know the build date, that still qualifies for £0. That means 85, 86 Minis, Escorts, 911s, Land Rovers, American Muscle, thousands more cars this year will join the tax-free club. Now, it's really important to say, if you don't know this, just because your vehicle becomes 40 years old and effectively qualifies for historic, you still have to tax it. You have to change your V5C to historic status. There's no charge to do that. You send it off to DVLA, it comes back. You still have to treat it as if you're taxing the vehicle. But every time you do it, it's £0, which is one of the most wonderful, free and great feelings in classic car ownership. And like I say, every single year, another several thousand cars become eligible for that. And it's a great feeling. The other good news, of course, is those cars also qualify for MOT exemption. Now, the debate rages on whether not MOTing your MOT exempt vehicle is a thing that you should or shouldn't do. I personally try to, wherever possible. I still MOT my cars. For the simple reason being, if there's an issue, if there's a problem or an accident, and I have a piece of paper that says somebody much more qualified and clever than me says my car was safe, it's kind of a get out of jail free card, isn't it, really? But if you've actually changed your car to historic status and taxed your vehicle for the £0 and you haven't MOT'd it, you're still good to go. But just make sure you've got someone who knows what they're doing, checking the roadworthiness of your ancient motor car. Now, if you're not sure what your car is, how much the tax should be, whether it qualifies, which category it's in, don't worry, it's all very straightforward. So head to the DVLA website, the Gov Check Vehicle Tax, or the DVLA Historic Vehicles pages. I'll put the links below in the description. For the exemption, you can apply online or at the post office. It's free. It takes just a couple of weeks for an updated logbook. Something to note there, though, if you're doing the historic, you can't use it for hire, reward or commercial. Doesn't count. If you're not sure, check your V5C, the date of first registration, or check the build plate on your vehicle. Interesting as well, a little tip here. A lot of people are talking about the fact that a lack of originality may affect exemption. There's been some very significant changes recently that suggest that's not the case. There's been some huge amounts of work by the HCVA with the DVLA to talk about cars that have been very heavily modified away from standard. There are a lot of very heavily modified vehicles that get to keep their original identity and therefore their exemption status. I don't think that's going to change. Again, there's a lot of scaremongering about the fact if you modify your car too much, you lose the identity, you lose the 40-year rule. I don't think that's going to be the case because of the recent rulings. Again, I'll put a link in the description below as to what's happened recently on that front. It's very interesting. So the bottom line, new car buyers, big emission luxury vehicles are going to get stung the hardest from April the 1st. Modern classics will see small inflation bumps, but real classics, they are as exempt as they have always been, and they're going to get the same zero VED that they've always had. So if you have one or you've got one approaching it, that's very good news. And also if you've got a car that's 37, 38 or 39 years old, hang on to it. I guarantee as these VED rises continue to come, the value of those 40-year-old cars will rise because they're so usable. You can use them almost every day in the summer, but they're so cheap to insure, very cheap to tax because it's free. And of course, an MOT, you don't have to have one, but you know my thoughts on this, I would do it anyway. So that begs the question, what would happen if you didn't pay your VED? Now, I am obviously a law-abiding citizen. I would always advocate that you pay your dues as a good member of this society. But if you didn't, how much would they spank you? Now, if your car's untaxed and kept on the road with no SORN declared, you get an automatic £80 late licensing penalty. And that drops to 40 quid if you pay it quickly, which is within 33 days. But if you get caught using it or driving it untaxed, that's very different because they're assuming it's not just something you've forgotten to do. You're being a blatant naughty person. Now that can give you an out-of-court settlement, which is usually 30 quid, plus 1.5 times the unpaid tax. My advice is just tax it. It's easier, it's quicker, it's less worrying. Now, if you ignore that, a magistrate's court can hit you with up to £1,000 fine or 5 times the tax owed, whichever is greater. And the worst case for repeated or driving offences, they can give you a fine up to £2,500. They can clamp the vehicle, they can remove it with any extra fees that incurs, or even crush it if you don't sort it. So I would say don't take that risk. It's not worth it, particularly if the car's only worth a couple of grand like a lot of my stuff is. So sawn it, tax it, declare it, do it properly. And also it's just so much easier, because if you get that flag against the car, it can be really hard to insure it on a classic insurance later. So just play by the rules. It's the easiest way. So there you go, just a very quick overview. I hope that helps. Most of it's online. I will leave some helpful little links and things below, which I do hope help you. But most of all, drive safe, tax-free if you can. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe, ring that bell, give us a few hype points if this has been helpful to you, and we will get back to normal content very, very soon. It's been a bit of a mad week this week, and I haven't had time to get any cars out, but I've also had a lot of people asking me about this, so I hope it helps you.